And we still got Moxley and Olivier to go. And I'm like, okay, lights out match. They're going to have a big brawl. This will be quick at least, right? Oh, no. I hate to use the term self-indulgent.
Well, this is the self-indulgent era of professional wrestling.
But 44 minutes with entrances for this self-indulgent, phony, silly, stupid, embarrassing, big budget, garbage fucking wrestling. And I'm going to be happy to point by point pick this fucking abortion apart, step by step. The only thing that they did right was they actually did turn the lights out. They dimmed the lights and then brought them back up. Obviously, because Eddie Graham invented the lights out match, it's a non-sanctioned event. This is not part of the normal course of proceedings, ladies and gentlemen. The promotion is not responsible. The State Athletic Commission is not responsible. We dim the ring lights as to signify that the regular event is over. And what happens now as we bring them back up is purely on the contestants. That was the idea. That's where the lights out match came from. And Eddie Graham is spinning in his grave to such an extent that he has probably powered the western half of California with a turbine like that. This fucking abortion from the start. Jon Moxley comes off as real and legitimate. He does a good promo and you can tell he can work. And he's not huge. He doesn't have great size. He doesn't look as badass as Terry Funk. People have compared him as that. No, it doesn't look like he'd kill you like Funk would, but he comes off as fairly real. And Olivier, regardless of whatever the situation is, comes across like a twit. Like a fucking simpering twit that's just phony and stagey. And they jump into this thing, and I think, okay, it's going quick. Olivier's in a fight, but he's throwing the forearms because his punches are shitty. Within seconds, they're throwing the garbage in the ring. Then they're out into the fucking crowd. Then they go to the rear of the arena. Of course, they've carefully blocked this out earlier in the day. And they've got security people trying to keep the people back. But once again, as I mentioned, anything can happen. Just because you walk through something in an empty building earlier in the day doesn't mean something else is going to happen. Plus, half the people in this major arena can't see this shit. The cameras can barely get a good shot of it. It's stupid outlaw shit where it's like an Ian Rotten show where they fight around the whole fucking building incessantly, but the whole building is a fucking 400-seat rec center, if that. But in this case, it's goddamn major NBA arena. And it was just stupid. And it was ECW with a budget is what it was. And then they're out in the crowd. And here, number one, they're both big stars, supposedly, in this environment. You would think Moxley would be the heel, but there's really no heel, and they're cheering both guys. And they're out in the crowd, and the people are patting him on the back, or patting both of them on the back. Nobody has any heat. The people are not even convinced they're watching a real fight as they're struggling and fighting with each other. The people are so scared of these two badasses, think Bruiser Brody and Stan Hansen, that they're reaching up and patting them on the back and getting some of the look, real sweat. Nobody's fucking scared, intimidated, whatever. Then, and that's the thing I was going to say about Moxley. He looks like he has talent, can do these things, but if this is the kind of fucking shit he wants to do now that he's been unleashed, I wish he'd go back to prison. Because it'd be better for the goddamn wrestling business if he went back and was stopped from doing what he wants to do, if this is the kind of shit he wants to do. They bring out a barbed wire baseball bat, a baseball bat wrapped in barbed wire, and then do phony shots with it. It's real barbed wire, but they're hitting the... Explain this to me. It's real barbed wire, but you've got a bat in your hand. Instead of just smiting the guy in the head once and winning the fight, you're raking it across his forehead. You're raking it across his back. You're giving him phony-looking gut shots and phony-looking back shots where the barbed wire's real, but you're not hitting him with the bat. What the... And it's obvious. So they cut Olivier's back up, but the shots that Moxley was using were obviously phony because it's a bat. And whether Bullet Bob Armstrong or me a time or two or any of the other fucking baby faces that have brought the Tennessee toothpick, Bill Watts, whatever, you get a fucking a top heel that has some heat. You apologize beforehand. You know how to swing it. He knows how to take it. You give him one gut shot and he fucking scampers off or is carried out. And it's the big comeback of hitting a few of them at a time. Bang, bang, bang. You do it in the middle of a match, it's fucking stupid. And they did work spots with the bat over and over. It reminded me of when action figures started coming out in the Attitude Era. And the people with the toy companies. Well, here's a doll of Scotty 2 Hottie. So they'd put a toilet seat or a fucking plunger or goddamn a shopping cart in with it. And all the wrestlers' figures had blunt instruments or fucking inanimate objects in them that had no relation to anything because some guy at the toy company watched an episode of Monday Night Raw where there's some shit stain written bullshit where they were fighting with shopping carts and toilet plungers in the bathroom. And assume, okay, this is wrestling. So then the other fucking idiot, not Moxley, the first idiot, but the second idiot, Olivier, not only pulls out a table, which they ended up using later, but a broom wrapped in barbed wire. Because you know he's the cleaner. And he used to have a broom in Japan, so of course everybody knows this. And they did goofy spots with a broom wrapped in barbed wire while they're really hurting each other and taking these bumps, and they are cut up so far. They're doing obviously fake and funny stuff at the same time where Omega's sweeping him with the broom across his bare back. But people are going, ooh. Well, here's an idea. If you don't want a guy with a barbed wire wrapped broom sweeping you on the back, roll over and get the fuck up because it's obvious you can. You dumb fuck. It was stupid. The whole thing was stupid. And the people are cringing because it's real barbed wire. But they're ignoring the fact that they're having a fake fight where they're really hurting each other. There are so many reasons why that this doesn't make sense on so many levels. It's like that goddamn intergalactic chess game that they used to play on Star Trek, where there were multiple levels. Nothing makes sense of this, no matter how you justify any of it. They're having a fake fight and really hurting each other. The people know that it's fake, even though it's supposed to look real, but they're making it look fake. Now Moxley's back of his head was bleeding from one of these stupid stunts they did. And here's another thing later on. They will get Moxley will get a goddamn screwdriver or an ice pick and gouge Kenny Omega's forehead, but he never bled from the forehead. And Moxley got hit over the head with a fucking broom wrapped in barbed wire, but never bled from the forehead. But they're bleeding from the back, and Moxley's bleeding from the back of his head, and we didn't even see which shot did that. Even in a bloodbath, I wrote, Olivier still looks silly and phony. They got another trash can. They spent way too much time looking under the ring for shit because they'd go for the fuck to the wrong side because they'd lost track of what they'd hid. Then they'd have to go look on the other side. Then here comes a giant board covered in mouse traps. They bring that in the ring. Jim Ross has to act, well, it's a new one on me, fans. I've never seen this before. I know as an announcer, the sinking feeling you get in your stomach when you're sitting out there and you're having to call stupid shit that's going to bury you. And I hear the tone in the voice. I felt sorry for him. I've been in that position. So then they took a bump on the mouse traps. Then Moxley brings a long gold chain in, not even an old, rough, rusty logging chain, but a brand new gold chain. And he sidewalk slams Olivier on the pile of chain. They've got a giant logging chain. And instead of using it to hit the guy one time and knock him out, they put the chain on the ground and have the guy take bumps onto the chain. Then Moxley, that's where he couldn't find some more shit. Then he come out with the ice pick. But he stabbed the top turnbuckle and lost it for a little while. So they could take more bumps onto the chain. At this point, I wrote, folks, don't hate this because of the quote-unquote brutality. Hate this because it's silly and phony. Then Olivier hung Moxley over the top with the chain by his neck, but he didn't know how to do it. So Moxley had to do half of it for him. And then Olivier's still posing and making faces, dropping down to his knees and pointing upwards. He's in a goddamn bar fight with mousetraps, but he's still making poses and faces. Then Olivier couldn't find his shit. Then he finds a sack. And he made a face and staggered kind of sideways like he was drunk. And he made a face like his fresh butt plug just fell out. And he brings in a bag of what is purported to be broken glass. And then he takes a big piece and he rips Moxley across the head. Of course, Moxley does not bleed or tries to rip him across the head. So then he rips him in between the fingers. Then he stomps the broken glass in the bag and then dumps the bag out. Brian, you know what sugar glass is, don't you?
Yeah.
Sugar glass is what they make for movie special effects. Instead of, I've actually found out about this in the WWF about 20 years ago, because I thought that when you broke a bottle over somebody's head, you just baked it, cracked it, took care of it, and then broke the real bottle over the guy's head, and what happened. But no, they have fake bottles. But the problem with this sugar glass is because it's made out of sugar and et cetera, it can't get wet. So it can't hold any water. And also, when you stomp it, it doesn't break and crack like real glass. It just powderizes. Was it a tip-off to you, Brian, when he dumped the bag of glass out and half of it was white powder that he had just stomped a bag of sugar glass?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking, actually.
Okay.
Because you didn't know at first when he pulled out the one shard. You're like, oh, what is,
Okay, well, yeah, we could buy that.
Yeah.
So he pours out the bag of sugar glass. So now they used real barbed wire a little while ago. Now they've gone to fake glass. And you can tell it's fake glass because they didn't know how to take care of it and use it right. And because there's nobody there to produce them and tell them. Then Olivia, besides taking bumps in the glass, but then they're not immediately coming up ripped to shreds. And, they're already bleeding from the back from the shit they've done. But no, this was not real glass. Then he puts some of the fake glass in Moxley's mouth. I bet then he probably had a dry mouth the rest of the night. And they try to it's just, I'm ashamed of wrestling right now, is what I wrote at this point. The glass goes in the mouth. I'm ashamed of wrestling right now. As good and believable and athletic and exciting as the Flair and Steamboat matches were, and you would show it to people who knocked wrestling and it made you proud to be a wrestling fan, and you would say, this is what we like, this was the exact opposite. It was phony. It was distasteful on multiple levels. It was disgusting. It was stupid. It was silly. This is the kind of stuff you hide from people who don't like wrestling because it makes people who like wrestling ashamed to like wrestling. Then Olivier stalked Moxley with an ice pick with the goofy horror movie face and stabbed him in the face, obviously phony. Then Olivier, they're back on the ramp now, halfway back to the back, and Olivier is screaming, "Bring it!" to his cohorts, the Young Bucks, who just happen to be standing by. They don't want to bring it. Finally, okay. And they wheel out a framework with what is basically a barbed wire trampoline. What was that thing? 15 feet across each way, 15 feet square?
Something like that, like a web.
And a web of barbed wire and all the barbed wire shit and whatever the fuck. This is when I did pause it and leave the room for a minute because I was going to get mad. I was determined to see this thing out, but I had to walk around for a minute. This thing, there's no way they could have got this to the ring. First of all, there's no purpose that this is not a real thing. This is something that they made up, that they built to take a bump into. It's not a real thing. It serves no other purpose. So they built something to wheel to the ramp that in this fight they were going to be in, Olivier knew that they would somehow end up on the ramp because you couldn't get it to the ring. So it was only going to be useful if you could get your opponent halfway back to the locker room down the ramp in this place where this thing could be wheeled up next to it. And then it was only good if you took a bump off the ramp into the thing. And then they teased throwing each other off into the fucking thing. And then they took a bump into the thing. How did Olivier, as I said, know that he'd need it? How did he know they'd be in the right place? How did he figure this would help him win? It's all so fucking stupid. And then they did the reversals and finally a suplex, and both of them went into the barbed wire. And I got news for you. I'm willing to be proven wrong. If somebody that whose word I respect or opinion I take seriously or whatever was to tell me it was real barbed wire, then I'd say, okay, but this was phony as a football bat barbed wire. Because they landed in it and got hung up in it, and they got back up, and nobody was ripped significantly more than they were to begin with. So they either used fake barbed wire after the fake glass, or there's no other fucking explanation. Would they not have been severely damaged more than that by taking that bump into real barbed wire? 4-pronged barbed wire that they use on farms that I've seen many a time since I was a child?
I thought the same thing. Like there was some blood early in the match, and then as the match kept going, there was less blood. I mean, they're using glass, they're barbed wire web, somehow no blood.
And then the referees and all the fucking ring crew and everybody takes like 10 people forever to get these two stupid fucks out of this thing, and the whole thing died. They didn't have a lot of momentum to begin with because this was taken for fucking ever. And then they took a bump through one of the fucking set lights. And I wrote, why won't this end? And then there comes Olivier out of the fucking light with a goofy face. And they go back to the ring. And then Moxley cuts the canvas off, which takes forever. And takes off the pad and uncovers the wood. And they take bumps on the wood. And I look now, we are over 3.5 hours into this fucking show. And I didn't see the pre-show. I'm talking about the actual pay-per-view. Almost 40 minutes into this fucking hokey-ass, big-budget Ian Rotten Mud Show bullshit that they're putting on pay-per-view for $50 fucking dollars. Then Moxley kicks out of a DDT on the wood. Then Olivier begins his grand climb pose where he stops at the buckles and points up and looks up and then takes his exaggerated steps and then realize, oh, wait, breaks character of the whole thing, drags Moxley a foot farther out, just 1 foot, and then does the climb again and misses his goddamn flippy thingy onto the wood, 2 count. What the fuck? And then Moxley DDTs him on the wood, 1, 2, 3. And then just to make sure that everybody knows that this new promotion is going to treat wrestling seriously as a sport and be a mainstream success on national television and everything, Moxley flips off the camera with a double bird and because he thinks he's Steve Austin and says fuck and motherfucker at least twice into the camera after he's already shit on the business and everything involved in it. What the fuck? That's what they ended their show that they charged us $50 with one good match on it, with the only guy in the company. How does Cody coexist with the fucking opera star, old Olivier? I can't wait to hear him sing. Bet he sings just like fucking Susan Boyle.
Riho.
Oh, Riho. And the 2 fucking grade school kids. How does Cody coexist with them doing this horse shit in all of their matches? And he goes out, steals the show effortlessly every time. He and Jericho have the only good matches, have the only matches that make sense, have the only matches that get the point across, that draw money, clearly defined heel and babyface, heat, point to a future match, set up a stipulation, the things that wrestling does. And every other motherfucker on that roster, except for guys like Daniels and Kazarian and those guys who know what the fuck to do and just don't have anybody to do it with. But everybody else is the next step up from the goddamn grade school gym in Wartburg, Tennessee at a fucking outlaw show in front of 100 people. They just can't get it. And there's Arn Anderson was there. I don't expect the great Muta to be a great wrestling coach unless it's for the Japanese contingent. There may be a language barrier, but Arn Anderson, if anybody's listening to him, is there. Is it that they're just not listening to the professionals, or is it that the professionals are happy to get a check and not telling them? Certainly to God, somebody in the locker room at the end of this last fiasco had to call Kenny Olivier over in the corner and go, okay, we can't do this any fucking more. Certainly, one would think. If they're giving him free, not only on the girls' fiasco, but on his fucking abortion of a match. Somebody's got to say at some point, okay, we're burning money and opportunity quickly, and we need to get these fucking outlaw drama class fucking dropouts in line. Somebody recognizes in that company that this is not good long term, I would think. Do you think?
I think
they?
There may be more than one person that recognizes that the schizophrenic nature of this overindulgent, self-indulgent, I'll use that again, the self-indulgent era of wrestling, that the schizophrenic nature of this show is not conducive to building an audience. Because I am someone who has been required to watch this show for several weeks, and I end up really looking forward to Cody, to Chris Jericho, two guys I have done nothing but criticize for years. And I've come to really look forward to their work on the show. MJF, Jon Moxley does some good promos, but everything else, I can't wait for you to see this fucking Wednesday night show. But everything else, it's schizophrenic. Nothing leads you to want to see something that's on the next segment. I see Cody and I see Jericho, and I end up watching the rest of the show because I have to, but I always think to myself, if I stopped watching now, I'd be okay.
I'd be happy.
I wouldn't miss anything. And you know what? I'd be right every single time.
Well, and there's basically the thing is, you watch these segments, the Jericho segments, the Cody segments, matches like that, the angles that they've done, that's what gets people to watch wrestling, watch television show, buy tickets, whatever. And once you get those people, wrestling fans, you've got them for a long time. It used to be for life. I won't say that anymore because now a lot of promotions have ways of running people off. But the only audience you get for this video game bullshit and this fucking glorified big budget Ian Rotten garbage wrestling horseshit. And as I said, and by the way, I did steal that. Somebody tweeted me actually that Olivier's faces look like his fucking butt plug just fell out. But you got a guy that thinks he's the best wrestler in the world, prissy prancing around like a ballet dancer, emoting like Laurence Olivier and making faces like his butt plug just fell out on national television. That ain't going to get you. That's going to get you the fans that watch until they come up with the next fad, whatever it may be, the next video game or the next other thing or the next fucking goofy video show to watch. Tosh.0, whatever. You don't get long-term fans. And sometimes when the people who watch for that type of match between Cody and Jericho or that type of angle that they've been doing the serious stuff at the top, they might actually stick around and watch the rest of the shit if you didn't give them exactly what they don't want, which is this silly video game bullshit and fucking comedy that nobody thinks is funny except the people doing it. So you run those people off with the rest of the show.